What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the ARC podcast. For those of you that are new listening, welcome. I am your host, Brandon Zachary. And at the ARC podcast here, the Athletes Resilience Center podcast, we talk about mental performance in sports. My co host, Matt Owens, and I go into conversations about how to improve mental performance in sports. And we have a lot of interviews on with guys who are either currently playing their sport, either at the collegiate or professional level, and guys who had played at the highest level and now are on to different ventures. But we're excited this week to have on special guest JP Hovey. For those of you that don't know, JP is a producer and videographer on popular sports podcast Bussin With The Boys. Bussin With The Boys goes over all things sports, primarily within the football world, but focuses on everything. They have a lot of cool guests on, and we're really lucky to be able to have JP on here. He goes through and shares the story of how he got to where he is today, how he was able to start his own videography business, how he's able to take a shot on himself, how he started somewhere that wasn't necessarily in videography itself and then ventured out and went and followed his passion and eventually ended up getting a job with Bussin and the Boys that's led to where he is today. We're also really excited for him to be able to share his new passion project called Make It to Midnight. You can find this on YouTube, Spotify, or his Instagram. And it's really cool because his new venture focuses on anything inspirational and motivational. He goes into a lot of detail about that, why he's starting it and how he's starting it and where he wants to go from here. So really cool conversations we had with JP. We're really lucky to have him on. Before this, he didn't know Matt and I at all. We followed each other on Instagram. We shot him a DM. We were talking a little bit and thought it was a good idea for him to come on and share his journey. Really going through all the things that make him really resilient, and shows kind of his experiences with working with high-level athletes, how he himself was able to be driven to where he is today, and why he wants to start this new passion project and focus on all things inspiration and motivation. So big shout out to JP, and please enjoy. What's up, JP? Thanks for coming on. We appreciate you taking the shot on us. He had no idea who we were before this, so we appreciate you coming on here and meeting with us and having some conversations, man. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing awesome, and it is an honor. I got the notification that the pod followed Make It to Midnight. I immediately went to go check out the page. I said, let me see what Brandon and Matt are about. I saw what y'all were about. I loved all of it, and I was like, and then when you sent the message, I'm like, man, we have to make this happen. I think it's awesome that we get to connect because I feel like we have the same goals in our mind, so it's fun to talk with some like-minded people.
Yeah, man, dude, that's
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 awesome.
awesome. Yeah, thank you for coming on, man. That means a lot. So we're gonna kick it right to you, man. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and go through us your journey of like how you got to where you are today, where you started, and how you became videographer, producer for Bussin With The Boys and stuff like that. So I'll kick it off to you, man.
Yes, sir. I guess technically it starts way back to you see these things behind me.
Yes,
I
sir.
got all I got all my Gamecock memorabilia. Shout out to my boy Starvin Marv on Instagram. He sent me this little Lego thing. I could barely see it, but it started with my Gamecock fandom. That's how I got into sports. But skipping through all that, grew up playing sports, obviously. The dream, of course, was to
Mhm.
play pro sports, but when you're 6 foot, white, and you love basketball, you're probably not going to go to the NBA. But I played soccer and football as well, so I was into it all. But I went to South Carolina, no good at math or science, love sports. So I'm like, I got to get into communications, like our guy Matt here, and
Sure.
I was broadcast journalism. At the time, like when you're a kid, it's I want to be the next Stuart Scott or Scott Van Pelt or color commentator, play-by-play guy. But then, you get into college, the media game kind of starts evolving. In
Mhm.
school, they were sort of just teaching us how to do local news, cable television. at the same time telling us, hey, this industry's dying. You're not going to make a lot of money. I'm
Yeah.
like, man, I thought we were supposed to come here and get excited and inspired. But ultimately, that's where I first picked up a camera, was in those classes, and did learn some great stuff from some of those teachers. But it was really my senior year that I started to get into more of the creative media. And that's when South Carolina had brought in their new creative media head, Justin King, who is there right now. And I reached out to them like, hey, could I intern with you guys or just be a student employee? They're like, man, unfortunately, we're not taking any upperclassmen. We're just like, they wanted to build their culture, rightfully so. But I was working as a SID, a student assistant. So y'all play college baseball. Y'all had SIDs that were working with probably a bunch of y'all's teams.
Right.
But I was helping them out. So that's when I kind of got to do my first interviewing. Not that I interview people now really, but I got to, meet these athletes, meet Gamecock athletes that I'm now colleagues with, but I'm still a fan.
Of course.
First and foremost, always. This is a sidetrack. I saw Dylan Stewart at Radio Row in Super Bowl week, and Dylan Stewart is like 18 years old, but he's a freaking stud on South Carolina D-line. And I went up to him. I was like, hey, Dylan, man, my name's JP. I'm a huge fan. You mind if we grab a photo real quick? And this was like craziest fan moment in my life. He was like, bro, he's like, you JP Hovey? I was like, oh, yes, sir. I was like, how you know my name? He's like, I see you on Twitter. And so I was fired up. And then I was talking with my guys after. I'm like, how funny is it that I'm like 29 years old and I'm like geeking out over the 18-year-old showing me love? Not even showing me love, just recognizing who I am. But anyways, I got to interview some of the players when I was a student, write the features that would go into the game program, which was really cool. And I love the storytelling side of stuff. But I saw what Justin King and his team were doing. They're making all the fun highlight videos from practice, from games, doing some cool little short mini docu-series on players. Like, man, I want to get into that.
Yeah.
So when I left college, I was still living there over the summer, and I got connected. I guess it was in the spring of my senior year, I got connected with one of my favorite players, Corey Boyd, growing up. He's actually a New Jersey guy.
Yeah.
He was like my favorite running back when I was a kid. And I say we got connected. I messaged him on Facebook and was like, hey, I see you're in Columbia, and I would love to come make videos for your youth football program. And he was like, man, I would love that, brother. I would appreciate it, all these things. So I'm nervous as crap, but because I get to go meet Corey Boyd. And so that's when he gave me my first opportunity to start making these highlight videos. Graduate school, didn't really know what I was going to do. I worked at a summer camp, Camp Ozark, which is like a sports focus, but also Christian, like foundation to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out there. That's in Arkansas. And before I went out there, I applied for this internship with Northern Texas PGA to do media marketing, basically do photography, work on their email list, all that type of stuff. But when you go to camp, they take your phone. I was like, hey guys, can I keep my phone? I don't know what I'm doing once I leave camp. And I have this thing in the oven right now. And a lot of these kids at camp are from Dallas, which is where the internship was. Ultimately get a call while I'm at camp. They're like, hey, we'd love to offer you the internship. I'm like, awesome. Go back to my cabin. And this is like middle schoolers is who I'm in charge of. And so jokingly, I'm like, all right, guys. And this week, a lot of times at this camp, there's some wealthy kids that go there.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, anybody got a guest house? Your boy's moving to Dallas. And one of the kids is like, oh, yeah, we have one. Like, you can come stay with us. I'm like, oh, like, well, maybe, whenever you go home, ask your mom and dad about it. And then you let me know, kind of not thinking anything of it.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, like right when the kid goes home and gets his phone back, he has a call. He's like, or I have a call. He's like, dude, my parents said it's okay.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Oh, snap. Like,
Dude,
let's go.
Crazy.
Which is huge because shout out to the Giles. I got to live there rent free, and the internship was like $1,000 a month. So in Dallas, you probably won't even be able to find an apartment for that.
Yeah.
So got my foot in the door there, started doing some golf stuff, continuing to teach myself the videography side of things. And before I left, I was trying to make a documentary about Corey Boyd
Yeah.
that ultimately I think I published like either right before I went to summer camp or while I was in Dallas. And leading up to that documentary, I'm thinking this is going to be it, man. 30 for 30 ESPN. They're going to see how do you do it? And of course, I had like a million audio problems. Camera
Yeah.
shots didn't work. So I was
Yep.
pretty gutted from that. Overall, great experience.
Yeah.
But I'm in Dallas. I'm doing that. I leave Dallas. I mean, I love the city, but golf wasn't really my speed. Looking around for stuff. I was a swim coach in the summers in my neighborhood for 2 years. One of the moms of one of the kids reaches out and is like, hey, or maybe I reached out, like her brother was the lawyer for IMG Academy.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Nice.
y'all know what IMG is,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
premier boarding school. And so she's like, you can go down to Bradenton and he could try to introduce you to people. I was like, yeah, I'm definitely in. So I go down there, land a role as a residential mentor. So basically your college RA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first semester I was floating. So I was just with all different athletes, all different ages. And it's nuts because probably 10 of those kids from that first semester are in the NFL right now.
I'm sure, dude. That
Wow.
school's
And
crazy.
they're like the best kids. One of them, JC Latham, got drafted by the Titans last year.
Yeah.
He was at IMG when I was there, so I saw him on the field this season. I'm like, dude, this is
That's
crazy.
cool,
Look at
man.
us. um, but so I was at IMG with the goal of like, hopefully I can join their social media team, make dope videos for the players, for the accounts, everything. Kind of had trouble getting my foot in the door with them. There's sort of a hierarchy at IMG where if you're a residential mentor, you don't get treated the greatest by the other departments.
Got it.
So I was kind of struggling. And then I found some traction with the tennis coaches. So my guy, Juan Matias, he was very open arms to me coming in, and they didn't have much coverage from the social team just because they were small and the school was big. So they couldn't get to it. So I started working with tennis. I started seeing some opportunities. I meet this guy, Dennis Shapovalov, and didn't know who he was at the time, but all the kids in the dorms were like, JP, you got to go film him. Like, he's so sick, yada, yada, yada. So I go out there. He comes up to me after. He's like, hey, you mind if could you send me any of these photos or videos? Like, I never have any content. I'm like, yeah, sure. What's the best way to get it to you? We exchange numbers. I go back to the dorms. All the kids are freaking out. Dude, we saw you. You talked to Dennis. And like, what is that like? I'm like, man, who is this guy? And so I Google him, and he's like the 19th best player in the world.
Wow.
He's like 18 or 19 years old, and he beat Nadal when he was 17. That's kind of like what
Sheesh.
propelled him up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, if he doesn't have any content, what does that mean for everyone else in tennis? Like, he's one of the best players. So then I starting to work more heavily with the tennis guys, get in trouble a few times with HR over at IMG. They're like, you're running this side business. I'm like, you can check my bank account. I'm not running any side business. I'm making you money right now. And so I had some issues with them. I still keep doing it because the coaches and the players, whenever they be off campus, I could go out to their practice, still do my thing. But IMG became kind of a lot. I wasn't growing how I wanted to, so I decided I'm going to start my own videography business. And then this is kind of how the Bussin Web starts forming. The first dude I started working with was Matt Jones, who was the running back at Florida, I guess in like 2010 to 13 or 14. And he was awesome, dude. He was trying to get back into the league. So I was just filming him some content that he could send to his agent that could then send to coaches. I also did some stuff with Canes baseball. I don't know if y'all are familiar, like the travel team.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I did some stuff with them, and that was all when I was still living in Sarasota. Still wanted to chase the tennis stuff because I wanted to travel the world, hopefully see all these new things. So I moved over to the other side of Florida and keep my videography stuff going, try to get in at these tennis academies and with some of the players, but just failing. I just could not for the life of me figure out why this wasn't working. And then so I switched to start to get into some MMA gyms because it's MMA is huge down there. I'm a big UFC fan, and I got denied at Dustin Poirier's gym, American Top Team. They like crack open. I'm legit going to these gyms, knocking on the door, telling them who I am. Have you heard about our Lord and Savior Hovey Films? We just need 5 minutes. But they like crack open the door. I'm like, hey, I want to offer you guys some free content for any of your young fighters. They don't have to be UFC. If UFC people want it, it's awesome. Like I'm just trying to, get my foot in the door. The guy's like, yeah, let me check with the boss. You could just tell he's not going to check with anybody. He comes back like 45 seconds later. Yeah, we're not interested. Shuts the door. I'm like, this mother effer, man. And so I go looking in American Top Team, Black Zillions. That was the rivalry at one time in MMA. So I'm like, let me see where the Black Zillions are at. Go to their gym, what I thought was their gym, and it was this other random small team, which that guy ended up being a really good dude, Daniel. And I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, this really isn't the spot I was looking for, but if you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing some work with him, and he pointed me in the direction of the like where the Black Zillions now Killcliff FC is. Went there, walked in, was talking to the smoothie guy, who I thought was just a smoothie guy at the time, chopping it up with him, telling him what I wanted to do. And he was like the ultimate hype man ever. His name is Ray. He's like, bro, I got you. He's like, practice is at this time and this time. Just come back and I'll introduce you to some of the fighters walking in. I was like, let's go. So I go, and he does exactly that, introduces me to this guy, Scrappy, Dustin Lampros, shout out him. And he brings me in to the gym. I start filming content with him, Evan Elder, Randy Costa, Impa, Landry, all these guys. And like start to get a little bit of traction. And Michael Chandler is also at this gym.
Yeah.
There's like another little Bussin connection.
Yeah.
And I still wasn't getting like, it's like I would never be filming for Michael Chandler or anybody because I still didn't have a great resume from the outside looking in. I go back home for Christmas, and I was living with my aunt and uncle at the time for like 4 months or 3 months. Go back home. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he has a gym in Greenville, and he's a big UFC guy. We had a mutual connection to them, and ultimately I got to go film some content for him. And his nickname, the NMF, the nicest mother effer, is very true. And they just like open arms. He and his brother Tony, they actually came to my wedding in August, which was awesome.
That's awesome, man.
That's amazing.
And got to film some stuff for them. So then I got to go back down and like, hey, I work with Wonder Boy, and you just immediately get taken more seriously.
Yeah.
And then after that, USA Boxing reaches out for Brian Taylor from USA Boxing. He's like, hey, I've been seeing your content. We'd love to bring you on to get some contract work. I was like, yeah, I mean, that would be incredible. And I was living with this dude, Juan Puerta, who was another fighter, actually at the American Top Team gym that I first got denied from. But Scrappy set me and him up, and cannot shout out Juan enough because I was living with him at his house. He was only charging me like $600 rent in Boca Raton, Florida, which is just like, I owe Juan everything just to be able to stay down there. But started working with USA Boxing, doing that stuff. Got to travel to Colorado Springs, Louisiana, San Diego with them. And then somebody sends me Will's Instagram story, and he's like, we're looking for our first full-time employee. We're looking for a videographer. If you think they could be one of the boys, tell them to swipe up and apply. So my friend sent it to me. I don't listen to any podcasts because it's just like head down trying to make, I'm making like $1,500 a month. And so you don't really have time to just be screwed around.
Yeah.
I apply for it. Don't really think I'm going to get it. I also apply for a job with the UFC at the same time. And I'm thinking, I'll probably get UFC because I'm working with these UFC guys. Interviewing with them both, make it to the final round of both, and then everything kind of stalls out. And it's cool because in the interview process to Will, I'm getting to mention, oh, I worked with Matt Jones. He was your teammate in Washington.
Yeah.
I'm down here at Killcliff right now. Mike Chandler's here.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's so crazy how connected the world is. But yeah, it stalls out. ultimately don't get the UFC job, get the Bussin job, move to Nashville within like 24 hours of getting it. And it's so nuts because probably my third week, I'm talking with Will. I was like, dude, it's actually nuts. Um, I was in the final round with the UFC interview, sitting my wife. She was living in Nashville, so Nashville was always kind of the number one choice. But if I didn't get it, I would have had to go to Vegas. And I was like, I was interviewing with the UFC too. He's like, dude, the guy we were looking at was looking for the UFC also.
No
Or
way.
interviewing UFC. He was like, and to be honest, like we wanted him. I was like, dude, he was the guy that was making all the Joe Burrow videos from LSU.
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I probably would have wanted him too. Oh, but yeah, that's how I got to Bussin. Hopefully that wasn't too long. I was trying to spark you
No,
a little
man.
bit of it.
That's perfect.
That was perfect, man. No, thank you for going through that, like your whole history and how you got here. But you talked about taking a leap of faith, trusting yourself, having confidence, and then going out on your own into the unknown and making your own videography business, right? Like
Yeah.
chasing your passion project. So obviously people can look at you now and be like, look how successful he is now. Like he's working with Bussin With The Boys. Like you're doing Make It to Midnight. You have like all these things under your belt. But obviously the journey was not so easy, right? Like you went through a lot of obstacles and there was a lot of things in your way. So can you kind of go through with Matt and I? Like you alluded to some of it, some of
Mhm.
the obstacles that you did go through, and then how you ended up overcoming it. Because I'm sure like you said you got rejected from a bunch of places when you're
Yeah.
asking to give free work. Like how do you overcome that? Like what are you thinking in your head to be able to be like, I got to keep pursuing this thing?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because and you don't realize any of it while you're in it. It's only
Yeah.
when you get to like do interviews like this with you guys and or if you just sit and truly self-reflect on it because as I'm sitting here now thinking on it is like the first rejection truly came after when I was interviewing for the full-time position with the Northern Texas PGA. They because I love Dallas, like I would have stayed, but they asked one of the questions was, "Do you see yourself here in 10 years or something?" Which at the time I'm thinking like this is a crazy question to ask somebody
Yeah.
just out of college. And I was like, I mean, I don't know. Like if if the job grows how I want to grow, yeah, I could
Right.
definitely
Of
see
course.
myself being here. And ultimately they did not like that answer. So you get a little so it's kind of like your first taste. It's like, oh man, I feel like I had the tools to provide value to your company, but you don't think so. And it's your first time leaving school and truly getting rejected from a job. And then going to IMG, you're I was after I was floating, I was in charge of all the middle schoolers, or not all the middle schoolers, but like 50 of them. One of me, 50 middle schoolers. And these kids are from Korea, China, Japan, US, anywhere you can think of. And that's like no middle schooler should be at a boarding school if we're being honest. Like they
Right.
need their parents, they need that sort of support system. And so I'm like IMG weighed me down because one of my passions is like helping out the youth, like you building the relationship with kids, helping kids believe in themselves, all that kind of stuff. I love it, and I was getting worn down because I felt like I'm in charge of almost raising 50 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 of them can't speak English,
Mm.
and so it's like there was one night one of the Korean kids who I love. He can't at the time. He cannot speak any English, and he's homesick. He's in sixth grade.
Oh man.
And I'm like legit sitting with him in the main hallway and I just have my phone out, Google Translate, trying to ask
Oh,
him anything to get
yeah.
his mind off whatever, like, hey, do you like superhero movies? What's your favorite food? All this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, this is not right. Like these kids shouldn't even be in this situation. I know different cultures are different and some of the kids handle it great,
Yep.
but it was just getting to be a lot and you have no real off days. And there I had one mom, she was being wildly disrespectful to me, which at the time it just hurts because you're like, man, I'm trying to pour in everything I can
Of
to these
course.
kids. And you're out here essentially calling me worthless. And I'm like, hey, I know I'm worthless. I'm only making like $28,000 and I'm living in the dorm with all these high school kids. So, but it's like, I took it hard at the time. It was a mental drain on me. And then, so leaving there, it was kind of fine when I was in Sarasota. And then once I moved over to Boca and was going to the tennis places, it's like, I got pretty down after a couple of the no's from the tennis academies because I'm like,
Yeah.
man, nobody is doing this for you guys. I'm offering you something I know is going to provide value to you, to the parents, and to the kids at the lowest cost possible because I'm so new in the game. And it's just like, no, 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 no. But through conversations with my dad, and that's how I came up with the Make It to Midnight things when I was like super down on myself. I would call him because he didn't have an easy upbringing, and he grinded his way, to give us a way better life than he had. And I'm just like, Dad, I don't know how I'm going to do this because it seems so obvious, and I have no answer for you. And he's like, hey, just focus, make it to midnight every night because you get past these 24 hours, you got a new set, and you never know what could happen. And what you can't control is your attitude going into that day. And you're not going to get anything if you have a bad attitude and you're sulking. And it's like, yeah, it's exactly what I need to hear. So it's like, just make it to midnight. Then you got a new opportunity. And that it hits home with me more now than it did at the time. It definitely provided a little spark, but I think it also helped me get a little numb to it and sort of take in all of the experiences of like, man, okay, I'm not making a lot of money, but I'm in a new place. I've made new friends, and
Yeah.
I am like surviving, and somehow it's working out. And so it's like through the relationships with the Scrappies of the world, the Evans, the Landrys, the Randys, the Rays, the Impas, it gives you the motivation because I think if I wasn't surrounded by those MMA guys at that time, I would have felt way more out of place because all my friends back home are doing, their normal jobs and everything
Yeah.
and having a little bit of fun after school. But when you're with these MMA guys that haven't made it to the UFC yet, they have no money. They're showing up, training every day, chasing after this bigger dream that, takes a long time to get to. So like I felt like I was in it with them, just fighting a different fight. I didn't have to put
Yeah.
gloves on, thank God. I would have been knocked out quick. So yeah, I think it just got like you get a little bit numb to it, and then you just have to tell yourself it is a numbers game, and you're not going to get no's forever if you do have a good attitude and all of that. So
Yeah,
that's
man.
kind of how I
No,
fought through it.
that's awesome, and I commend your perseverance through that all, man, because that's tough, and not a lot of people can do that. Like Matt and I have talked in previous episodes. Both of us had aspirations to play professional baseball out of college. We both went to a bunch of independent ball tryouts, and it was kind of like similar, like you're saying, like lots of no's, lots of you know what, we really like you, but like squad's too full, we just can't have you, like stuff like that. So
Right.
we really resonate with kind of that, and just like persevering through and pushing through and trying to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So
Did y'all have a moment of like, is there any moment that stands out off one of the no's or like a lesson that came into your head off of it?
Matt, I'll
That's
let you go
awesome.
first. I'll
Yeah,
let
no,
you.
that's no, that's a great question. I think coaching wise, baseball is one of those ones where it's not a lot of money, it's not a lot of pay, like when you're coaching, and like early on, like it might have not been a no for me. It was more so just kind of like you're not ready yet. Like where you kind of see yourself going, you're not ready for that. And like, playing wise, it's you can go out and you can be like, okay, well, I can hit the gym, I can do X, Y, and Z, and like coaching wise, it's like someone needs to like almost hear you teach or hear you like speak or watch how hard you work, and sometimes like that person's not going to be where you're at that point in time, and so that person's like, hey, you're not ready, but they don't see everything else. But it's like when you see them the next time, it's almost like you have to present yourself as like, I've grown up, I've matured, I've gained all this experience in like this amount of time and everything. And yeah, I told Brandon and I told my girlfriend before, I'm like, yeah, I used to go to this one camp all the time, and I'm there, I'm working hard, I'm doing everything, and the guy who is the head coach of that school like doesn't even know my name. And then 3 years later, he hands me my check and he's like, okay, I'll see you later, Matt. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you almost feel like you kind of, you got there and everything. You feel good. You got your check. You're walking out the door, but you also, he said your name. I'm like, driving home, no music, nothing playing. I'm like, man, he knows my name now. All right, here we go. Like now it begins and everything.
I love that.
Yeah, and then I'd say like it's really funny. So like I told you, Matt and I had known each other, man, since we were 10 years old. Like we've been on different paths at times, but it's like parallel. Like we're headed in the same direction. It's really weird. We were talking about it one of the episodes. Like we both got hurt at the same time in high school. Like had to miss time for high school baseball. Like weird stuff just like occurred at the same time. But the biggest I think obstacle was like after college. We alluded to it. We were trying out all the time, and like I had a pretty decent senior year of college for like pitching. So I was like, I think I could get a shot somewhere. Like if I go to the tryout and show myself. I'm a smaller guy. I'm 5'10". Love to say 5'11" in cleats. But like
On the mound, 6'4".
yeah, on the mound 6'4". I love that.
That's awesome.
So like out of college, I wasn't really getting like a lot of interest, I'd say. So we went to these, open tryouts and like I was throwing pretty well. It was probably the best I've ever felt. And I was like, okay, I feel good. Like physically, I was the strongest I've been. I was throwing the hardest. It was coming together. So we go to this tryout in the middle of nowhere, Illinois, and we're like sitting there, we're waiting. The tryout's supposed to start at 9. The coaches stroll in out of center field at like 9:30 with coffee. Like they all got their sunglasses on. They're like, they don't want to be here at all. So they come out and they're like, try out, go for it. I go up and throw, and they give everyone 5 hitters to go up against, and it's like, let's see what you got. So I go up and I think I struck out 4 or 5, and I was like, okay, like feeling myself, I'm good.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, stay out there. I'm like, okay, and like strike out the next 3. I'm like, okay, like I'm feeling myself, and then kid breaks his bat, hits a ground ball, he was out. I'm like, okay, and they're like, just keep going. I'm like, I'm kind of like dying out there because normally
Right.
at these tryouts, it's like they give you 20 pitches. I'm going like 40 pitches. I'm like, all right, I'm dying. The coach is like, I want to see the changeup again. So the catcher like puts down the changeup, and I'm like, no. He's like, changeup. I'm like, no. I'm facing a kid I had already faced before, and I struck him out. And he goes, changeup. I'm like, no. And then the catcher comes out, and it's an open tryout. It's not that serious. He's like, dude, I'm sorry. They keep telling me to throw this. Like, just throw it. I'm like, all right. I throw it. Kid hits a home run. Literally, like, lefty just hits an absolute bomb.
course.
And I'm like looking at him like, dude, I told you no. So anyway, that happens. But like I felt good. Like I'm talking to Matt. Matt's like, dude, you look pretty good. Great. After the tryout, the coach in front of everyone, there's like 100 people. He's like, thanks for coming out today, everyone. Can I speak to Brandon Zachary after the tryout? Like just called my name out. And I'm like, this is it, man. Like, I'm signing here, and then the Yankees, baby. Let's go. Like, and then like he calls me up, and he's like, yo, man, like I think you're a better pitcher than some of the guys we have on the squad right now. Like, would love to sign you. And I'm like, dude, like I'm in. Like, I will sign right now. You just tell me where. And he's like, I'll give you a call on Monday, and then we'll go from there. I'm like, great. So like we drive home. I'm like on my high horse, dude. I got a speeding ticket on the way home. I'm so excited. Like, I'm driving with Matt. Like, we're driving back to New Jersey, and
You're
then
driving the speed of your fastball.
yeah,
92 out there.
dude, I was
Or
just
I don't know how, maybe 98, 99.
not that hard. I wish, but I was like, I was amped up, like very excited, and then we get home, and I mean, I guess it's been like 400 Mondays since then, but there's been no call. Like, it just was like it was one of those things though that like a lot of times that was the closest, but a lot of times coaches were like, love to reach out and connect again, just nothing.
But yeah.
And then I ended up signing over COVID when I wasn't even trying to play anymore. It just kind of like an opportunity arose, and it's that weird thing when like you let something go and then it presents itself again. It's like it just kind of happened, and it was like really, really special. Truly, it was.
That's awesome, bro. That's
No,
awesome.
but yeah, no, I appreciate like we're very big into hearing like people overcoming the obstacles, because like even though on the surface it might seem like this was something that came up overnight, it obviously wasn't, and there's a lot of trials and tribulations that go through that. So I appreciate you sharing that, man.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I saw, I think it was Alex Hormozy, one of his little quotes. He was just like, if you were to create the perfect person, what would you want them to be? You'd want them to be patient. You'd want them to be strong. You want them to have leadership qualities. You want them to have all of these things. How do you get all of those things? You got to be tested in situations that you're going to have to be patient in. You got to be weak and then become strong. You have to lift the weights. You have to do whatever it takes. And that's the ideal person. And the ideal person goes through all of those things. And when I hear that and then look back on it all, it's like, yeah, man, I wanted this thing to be successful, but it was never going to be successful unless I went through these bad things.
Right.
So it's just wild to like look back and kind of see it all.
Yeah, I mean, if it was easy to be a videographer, producer, if it was easy to run a podcast, you know, everyone would do it and the first episode would blow up and then they, you know, have everything they ever wanted. But like, there's no gratification in that, man. It's like putting in the work every day is what makes it fun. Like the process is what we enjoy. Like Matt and I are very process oriented. We talked about it in a bunch of episodes. Like you can have as many goals as you want and goals are great, but if you don't have the right processes put in place, like nothing's going to be able to happen. So like coming from Philly, like trust the process and you know, just go through with it, man. Like just keep putting your best foot forth every day and you know, good things will happen.
I love it, bro.
Yeah, man. But yeah, so then transitioning to like obviously you overcome that. Like you described, man, you got the opportunity with Bussin with the Boys. You become videographer, producer, like you're doing a bunch of stuff with them. So in the beginning, I told you this at the beginning before we recorded, but like you started a little bit more behind the camera, behind the scenes, working on stuff, and then gradually you've been implemented more and more into the content. You've been a piece on the podcast. How have you dealt with that mental shift of going from behind the camera to in front of the camera? And then how have you also dealt with, I hate calling it fame because it sounds so crazy, but like truly, you know, there's guys that you were like, oh, I'm really excited and pumped up to meet this guy. And then they recognize you. Like, how weird is that? And then how have you kind of navigated that? Because I'm sure that's kind of weird at first, you know?
Yeah, definitely. The first part of it, you know, when I first got to Bussin, I thought my role was going to be, all right, we're trying to get our vlogs to take off. So we're going to have you with us coming to, at the time, whether they're working out, if Will's going to try out for a team, whatever it is, if they're going to a charity softball game was my first vlog that I ever did for them. And so I kind of thought that's what I was going to be doing. And then this Alex Lagos, he was working with the boys at the time, and he kind of created a lot of the processes that they had.
Yeah.
And he was showing me the podcast process. Bloss, he was showing me kind of the production side of it all. So thanks to them, I was able to learn more about the pod world, which ultimately was the moneymaker for Will and Taylor. And since they were still playing, that's mainly where their time was going. They weren't vlogging as much as they probably thought they would be. And so I got to learn all that. I developed, I think, a little bit of a skill or a talent to pick out the funny parts of the content, decide what would be clipped, how the clip would look, storytell it in a fun, short way, and sort of boost the clips, boost the production value of the clips. So kind of got a pulse on that, how to run audio, those types of things. And then, you know, Will starts to transition out. Oh, let's do a gambling show. Now I'm comfortable back there on the switcher. He's doing Bet the Bus. You know, filming it, editing it, talking on it. So I have Bet the Bus and the podcast on my plate. And then the vlogs start happening more. So at one time I was doing the podcast clips, the gambling show, and the vlogs. And there was times that this was, you know, we were traveling every week, and I worked like 28 straight days one time. And I was ready to, I'm like calling my mom or talking to Sit, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this is horrible. Cause I mean, I love hanging out with my friends. Like I love pouring into the other parts of my life. Like, I mean, this job is awesome and it's fun. At the end of the day, it is still work as much as it looks like fun, and it is fun. And I'm super grateful for it. But you know, we compartmentalize all the different things, and it is in the compartment of work. Thank God it's more fun than a normal job. But it's like, I got pushed to my breaking point with the boys like probably 2 times. And both times, they took steps. We hired on Mitch. Mitch was able to take over the podcast. Then we hired Sherm and Coop and Jared, and now we have a whole little squad, and it's helped take things off of me, Jack, Garrett's plate. And so it was kind of like a natural transition. And I love, it's not that I love like being on camera. I love these types of opportunities. So like,
Yeah.
and when you get to be on camera, you get to do these types of things. So that's sort of my driving factor more so than the following of it all.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, man, I want the opportunities to do the cool things and meet the cool people that Will and Taylor are meeting. And so the more I'm editing, the more I'm like, man, I need to find out a way to get out from behind the computer because I'm starting to go crazy during the day. Sitting here on my laptop, editing all these clips. And I know that, some of my God-given gifts are my personality and, getting along with people, whatever it may be, being quick-witted, fast humor type stuff. And so it just naturally kind of happened. The more comfortable I get with Will and Taylor, the more comfortable they get with me, the more they let me talk on the mic, which is a really cool thing about them because a lot of the talent in the entertainment world, they don't want like their producers or stuff to be chiming in that often. And with them, they're awesome. Like they open the floor up. Hey, South Carolina, tell us, JP. It's very organic and it's very selfless of them to let me do that, to let Jack do it for Tennessee, Garrett for Alabama.
Yeah.
So it's kind of naturally has happened, and I'm grateful for it. I'm hoping that we can keep growing it. And then the fame part, it's so funny because there's like, it doesn't happen that often, but like once or twice on the airplane if Sid and I are going somewhere in Nashville, somebody could be like, "Oh, JP, what's up, bro?" I'm like, I'll just look at Sid. I'm like, "Hey." And so, I mean, it's definitely, I'm in like a good little area of following wise because I get to like I see who follows me. It's not like there's all these notifications and it all just runs together.
Of course. Yeah.
And so, people that comment a lot on my stuff or, just like bring positive vibes, I can reach out to them and like find out about them, like where they live, what they do. Push Up Tuesday I'm doing, and this guy Brian, who like, man, this dude Brian, I love this guy so much. I never met him in person, but he lives in Minnesota. He works at a mattress store, and he would come on Push Up Tuesday like every day. He was adopted, and he would like talk about how much he loved Michael Chandler because Michael Chandler's family adopts. But he would always talk about like I'd ask him how the workday was. Man, like I have a big meeting tomorrow with my boss. Like our store is doing really well, and he's just like fired up to talk about it. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. I know we haven't met, but it's like I'm friends with this guy Brian, and I get to hear about his life experience. And to me, that's like the coolest part of the fame of it. So I haven't had to like balance it out yet. Maybe I'll get big enough one day where we will have to balance, but
Thank you for listening to the ARC podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Philly Pretzel Factory of Marlton, located on North Maple Ave in Marlton, New Jersey.
Tell them Matt and Brandon sent you. We appreciate all your support. Thank you for listening, and back to the podcast. Yeah, it's funny, like, you kind of mentioned, Will, Taylor, and just kind of how they keep giving you a little bit more and more as you kind of go along. Kind of sticking in that, do they inspire you or help motivate you kind of in your own endeavors, and kind of how have they kind of helped in that light for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they both, they'll retweet you, they interact with your stuff, which goes a long way when you're trying to build up a brand. And Make It to Midnight, I haven't called on them yet to amplify myself. I want to see what we can do.
That's a secret fastball, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And so no, I mean, like Will, he does a lot of different things to where like I love his Nebraska videos that he's doing, the pump up videos. I'm like, man, it could be a great lane for me in South Carolina. Obviously, I'm not Will Compton at Nebraska. I'm just a fan. I didn't play at South Carolina, but that's kind of funny. Like
Yeah.
if I'm talking like that. Um, and then just the different things that they're into. Like both of them are big on self-improvement, reading books about it. They both want to like Will's super into reading all these CEO books, like how to run a business, how to scale properly. So all these things that when you see both of them online, they look like fun people. They joke around a lot. We fart into the microphone, all the stuff, which is the best part. But there's a lot of layers to it, and it's cool to get to see the layers up close. They're very like generous with their connections as well, which helps. So I mean, they do a great job of it, and they've laid the roadmap for athletes and people that just like are into the sports media space. And it's just what you got to do. You just got to follow the blueprints that are out in front of you.
That's awesome. So, we do like a lessons learned. We just started doing a lessons learned on, our guests that come onto the podcast and everything. So, are there any guests that you guys have had on that kind of maybe said something that kind of stuck with you, or kind of gave you something that you're like, hey man, I'm about to run with this now. Yeah, I love that saying or anything like that. And who was the
Yeah,
guy?
one of them that sticks out in my mind is Michael Chandler. I mean, I love Michael
Yeah.
Chandler. I was a fan of him before I even met him. But I don't know if it was actually, he was speaking on, because, the adoption process is insane. Takes families entirely too long to be able to do these things. And he said one of the workers that was helping him and his wife through the process, and they thought they were going to get a kid, and then it fell through at the last minute. They were both very bummed, disappointed, and the worker said to them, hey, like, if it's meant for you, it won't pass you up. And he said that, and I mean, I guess not for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons it stuck with me. And then I hear Inky Johnson, like 4 months later, he shares the same thing. Like, if God wills it for you, it won't pass you up. Like, that doesn't mean there won't be trials and tribulations along the way. And it doesn't mean you can't slow yourself down by trying to, create, trying to make your own roadmap instead of following his plan. And it's like, if it's meant for you, it really will not pass you up. And I mean, it's so true. Like we can't think in that long term because it's hard. It sucks to be in the middle of it. But yeah, if it's meant for you, it won't pass you up unless you quit. So you can't
Yeah,
quit.
That's true, man. Dude,
I
I
love
love
that.
that. I love that. You guys have some awesome guests, dude. Like, I feel like Michael Chandler, every time he comes on, fires me up.
Yeah,
Jelly Roll, dude. Jelly Roll fires me up. Like, I
dude.
just heard him on, what was that? It's Jay Shetty's podcast. I
Yeah,
forget what it's called. You know what I'm talking about. But,
yeah,
dude, him speaking, man, he's just so, like, inspirational, so motivational. And, like, I know that's not the athletic sector, but, like, dude, anything he says is gold, man.
yeah. Dude, Jelly's awesome. And by the time this comes out, we will have had him and Ernest, and he was talking about his weight loss journey, kind of in depth.
Yeah.
And he drops so many gems in there.
Yeah.
And he had this one that he was talking about. It was like I don't know if because he's an emotional dude. He'll cry a lot,
Yeah.
and it was like a tear is just like either like a tear is just sadness with nowhere to go, or a tear is sadness like with something about a tear.
Yeah.
However he said it, I'm like, oh my god, that is juicy. We had Jameis Winston on recently. He was dropping just
Oh,
bombs every
I
other
love
word.
Jameis, dude.
Your post with
Dude,
Jameis was awesome.
man, they every single time because they know that I literally when I go to the gym I'll put on like a 45-minute motivational compilation instead of music and just listen to
Yeah.
people talk. And so the whole crew knows that I love this type of stuff. And I felt like the whole Jameis episode, they just kept looking at me in the back. Like, I'm just like, so Jameis has a ton. He had that one. At first, I didn't really understand what he was trying to say. And it went viral because he said in another interview, it was like, uh, you're like, you're not what you think, but what you think you are.
Yes. Yeah,
For
I
the
did see
longest
that.
time, and I'm like this with like the Bible, dude. Anytime I'm in a small group, man, and they call me like, "What this verse like? What does this say to you?" I'm like, I mean, I don't. It's exactly what it says. Like, I'm so bad at like breaking it down. But when I hear these types of things, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. But at first it didn't, and then I'm listening back. I'm like, that is so true. Like you are your thoughts, and what you think is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's really cool because I mean I've listened to a lot of the pods, like, and obviously a lot of it is like comedic. It's like a lot to do with sports and listening to that. But
Mhm.
then, dude, like there are some bars in there that you listen to and you're like, okay, like maybe I'm gonna go hit a bench PR after this. Like it gets you fired up. It gets you juiced up.
Yeah, Max Crosby is another super
Yeah.
inspirational individual. Like we always joke at the bus too. If something is sucking or we put out a video, it doesn't get the views we want because his Max's whole thing is more is required,
Yeah.
and so we just will always be like more is required,
Love
more is required.
that.
And but watching how he works, 'cause, I mean he's as paid as they come when it comes to NFL
Yeah.
guys, and talk about like how y'all are process driven. It's the same with him, and it's so motivating to get to be around those people, shake those people's hands, and to see how nice of a guy Max Crosby is. Like he shows love. You could tell a lot by the guys that kind of show love to us in the back of the bus, and just them like learning our name or coming and saying what's up. Like man, this guy, we immediately love the person. It's like it's a great way to build your fan base just to do those little things. But Max has always been so good about it, and like I'll go back and forth with him on Instagram every now and then. And in my head, I'm just like, yo, this is Max Crosby. It's cool. Do y'all have any like favorite quotes off the top of your head?
Um, I
Man,
have one from our first interview. I don't know, Matt, if you're gonna have the same one.
I was about to
It's
say
oh, is
DC.
it? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's really simple. We had one of our buddies that we grew up playing with. He got drafted by the Dodgers. He got called up to the majors by the Nationals. Like he's like been through the ringer and like shared a lot of it on our episode. Like very grateful for him and the experiences we've had with him. But dude, he spit this quote that I didn't even think about before, and he's like, every day I love my coffee and my breakfast. And it's like, okay. And then he's like, when I have my coffee and I have my breakfast, no one can beat me that day. And I'm like, that is like next level mindset. Like you
Yeah.
start your day the way you want. And you're like, dude, now the rest is gravy, man. Like I did what I want. Now I'm ready to go, dude. It just, it fired me up. I like, to this day, I text Matt and I'll be like in the morning, I'll like send him a picture of like coffee in my mug. I'm like, had my coffee. No one's beating me today, dude.
Put the word out.
Yeah. Say
Yeah, I
my
love that.
my grandmother from South Carolina too, Dillon, South Carolina. Shout out Dillon.
Oh,
She she gave me one, and yeah, I loved it so much. Even though I'm a man of faith, I probably shouldn't have got tattooed on myself. But she said you'll never forget it. Now it's a blessing delayed is not a blessing denied, and like that's one thing that kind of you walk your journey and everything. It's like, hey, the door's gonna shut. Like, okay, open the next. Like, walk through that one. Another door's in your way. You gotta open the next and just keep going, and everything like that. So she always ends our phone calls with that as well. So she knows, and she keeps me
oh.
prayed up, man.
Is she
Yeah.
still in Dillon?
No, so they're in Florence now. So it's funny. I do have a
Congrats.
tie to. Oh yeah, yeah, yes sir.
Oh,
My tie
gotta
to.
get your game.
I know. Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like growing up there, like my pop, he's from Latta. My grandmother's from Dillon, and they both like they love the Gamecocks. Not as much as you do, I'll say that. So like, but we've never had a piece of Clemson memorabilia growing up and everything. So
I love that. Sitting, my wife, she actually went to Clemson.
man,
So, but this is
Wow.
what people don't understand, like how serious it is. That, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. I let Gamecock Nation know, like, no matter what, I'm gonna be behind enemy lines. Yes, yes, I love her, and yes, I want to build a great family with her. But at the end of the day, I gotta get access into Clemson, and this is the best way to do it. Just kidding, sitting. Just kidding.
Dude,
Oh
that's
man.
hysterical. Yeah, my wife is a Eagles fan, like pretty diehard Eagles fan, and this is a weird tie, and I you're gonna give me some crap for this, I'm sure, but I'm a Chiefs fan, so my dad.
Right, you and Mitch.
Look at this dude.
Yeah, I know, Mitch, shout out Mitch. But my dad grew up in this middle of nowhere Kansas, like really small town. So growing up, like always rode with the Chiefs, like loved Larry Johnson, loved Trent Green, loved like Jamal Charles, obviously Priest Holmes, like those
Yeah.
were my guys growing up. Dante Hall, the human joystick baby, like
Hmm.
those were my guys, but always terrible. And then of course, like first Super Bowl, Chiefs get the W against the Eagles. I'm like all in my wife's ear. She's like, "All right, chill." Now this one, blowout, Eagles crush the Chiefs. I'm like, "Oh, dude." I'm like sitting there. She's like doing the "Fly Eagles Fly" chant in my face. I'm like, "Oh no, this is
Oh,
not good."
dude, it's brutal. And I mean, I respect Eagles fans so much because
Yeah.
that is the culture you want to have as your
Hmm.
fan base.
Yeah.
But man, it would be tough to be on the receiving end.
Yeah, man, but they're passionate, man. They just love ball, man, and that's all you can ask for,
Yeah.
dude. All right, awesome. So we talked about Bussin' with the Boys and your journey there. Now, let's shift to your new venture. Let's talk about Make It to Midnight. We're fired up about this. This is kind of the main reason we wanted to have you on because a lot of the things that we see you post, we feel we align with, and we kind of are striving to do very similar things in similar outlets. So, what made you want to make the switch from like a comical side? Like I think in the first episode of Make It to Midnight, you referenced like you were kind of to do more like comedical posts online and like
Right.
a little bit more satirical, and now you're like, all right, let's go to this motivational, inspirational side. And like you said, you've always had a passion for it, but what made you be like, one, I want to start this, and two, I want to shift to this motivational, inspirational side of myself?
Yeah, I think I've always kind of been into it as sort of like an innate thing,
Yeah.
but I could never really put a word like couldn't put a pulse on it or anything when I'm in high school or college. Like I know that I enjoyed like consuming the content, and then as you get older, you get some more experience. My dad was always really good about kind of dropping some knowledge on me and my brothers, and I guess maybe I feel like the first thing that ever stuck with me was he did this illustration when I was going through a tough time in college. I think he pulled out a tape measure and he extended it to 75 inches because 75 is the average age of a male in the US. And so he's like, what you're dealing with right now, and say I was 18, he's like, you could deal with this from 18 to 20. And he's like, and look, we have this whole thing spread out, and look how small this is.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that is like that's powerful.
That's
Very
And
phenomenal.
powerful.
it's something, I mean, y'all know, like we all have friends that their parents they're not very involved. A lot of people don't have role models. I'm lucky enough that I had a role model in my house and that I would seek role models elsewhere too. But I think like having that type of impact probably is the first little seed of, okay, that was really cool. And then being involved with like youth sports, coaching the swim team, coaching a church basketball team. And I know Denzel Washington says it, but they're like the most selfish thing you can do is help somebody else because of the feeling you get from helping someone.
Yeah.
And it like working with a kid, teaching a kid how to swim, or at the end of the summer, a kid's mom coming up to you and like, I cannot say thanks enough for spending the extra time with my son, just, hanging out at the pool, throwing the football to him off the dime board. Like, it means so much. He looks up to you, whatever it may be. I'm like, man, that is like, that's what's life about because you can't even explain the feeling, which is a good sign. It's like all the best things I feel like you shouldn't be able to put words to or be able to explain. Hopefully I can get better at putting words to it because that would make me better at Make It to Midnight. But I think it's something special about it. And yeah, then I think as I started to kind of find my footing with Bussin' with the Boys and started to get a little bit of a following, I'm seeing because during COVID, Vic Blends, the barber,
Yeah. Yeah.
said, "Hey, man, what do you do for a living?"
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love the comedy videos off of him too.
Yeah.
But I love those. Like he's talking to just a little kid. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the kid is like, a police officer or an astronaut. And you see that wholesome innocence and hear some of their stories. I'm like, man, this Vic dude, he's just a barber, and he's changing the world truly. So I'm like, man, how could I do that? And then on Twitter, I start sharing stuff. Just like at night, I would just not always, but I would do like a good night, everyone, with the meditate emoji, and it would be like a clip from Ted Lasso or my. He wouldn't claim me as his student. My master Uguay, share one of his quotes because I love Master Uguay. I love animated movies. I've always loved animated movies and the lessons they share, and it sort of plays into my personality because I have like I don't take things too serious. I like to think I keep like a childlike mind or like heart about it, and so the animated movies have just always spoken to me. And so I would share clips from those, and it was starting to, people were like, man, thanks for sharing this. People would DM me like, hey, love the positive energy you bring on the podcast, or love these tweets. It's like nice to see it in the midst of all the crazy crap that we get on our Twitter timelines.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think I started like consuming a lot of Chris Williamson's content, and I'm loving what he's saying.
Yeah.
And I saw like so many of the wrong things being like put out to the kids or put out just to anybody, and like people following all the wrong people, getting caught up in politics and like idolizing some of these figures. I'm like, man, I just feel like we are focused on all of the wrong things right now. And at the end of the day, all I want to do by the time I leave here is make an impact on somebody. And this Make It to Midnight could be a great way to do it. And I know, a lot of people, we all have friends, people we know that like, have committed suicide or whatever it may be. And because they didn't have somebody in there helping them try to make it to midnight. So that's just kind of the goal of it all, and why I'm interested in it. I know that was kind of a long answer, but nobody has really ever asked me before. And so,
Yeah.
you know in your head, but you never speak it out loud. So you're like,
Of course.
this
No,
is it.
dude, that was perfect. And
Yeah.
it's cool to hear too about your relationship with your dad, because Matt and I both look up to our fathers and have had fathers like who coached us, who were there for us throughout it all. Like, and you said the Make It to Midnight actually came from a quote from your dad, like an ideology basically from your dad. And
Yeah.
when I was throughout the time I was playing, even like if I had like a presentation at work or something, like something stupid, ever since I was 8 years old, my dad, when he would coach, we'd get in the like little team huddle, and he started chanting. Literally, we're like 8. Probably shouldn't have done this, but he's like, "Kick some ass, kick some ass," and it's like, you're 8, you hear that, you're like, "Let's go!" And then like umpires would come up and be like, "Yo, yo, yo, can't be saying that," and they would be like, KSA, which was just like the little acronym for it, dude. Till like 2 weeks ago, like I'm giving a presentation at work, he just texts me like KSA, like. It's just like a cool little,
that's
same
awesome.
type of thing that like, dude, it's a special bond in relationship. So that's cool that you have that too, man.
You got to get some shirts going.
Yeah, dude, it's a cool little acronym and something cool that we share. So I appreciate that. But you also alluded to your love for like some animated movies, animated TV shows, and obviously like if you've seen a lot of our posts or like people know kind of what we're doing in trying to go into the sports world and sports related content, I guess. Like I agree there are so many other lessons to be learned from other outlets other than sports. Can you kind of explain to us a little bit from your perspective? How important is it to find inspiration from something that's not just in your immediate like work? Because you have like the post from Master Uguay, you have the Ted Lasso quotes, I think you have the lessons learned from SpongeBob, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that's like super
My
unique
goat.
and super cool. But like there are lessons there that like if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't even know, and then you're kind of looking back like, wow, like this is all facts, man. This is really true.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything, man, because everybody is so different. But at the end of the day, we do want the same thing. So everybody, receives content in a different way, but the underlying message is kind of unified. And it's like, from a work standpoint, I can provide so much value to Bussin' With The Boys because I watch whatever animated show. The way my brain works is like Will and Taylor could be SpongeBob and Patrick. And regardless, like, SpongeBob is a nationwide phenomenon. Obviously, I'm a big fan of it, but like, everybody knows SpongeBob.
Of course.
So when an advertiser comes to us, and a lot of them want like these custom social ads, and this is honestly an idea I just thought of as like when you asked me this question. And
Love
I
it.
don't know maybe it could be like True Classic, a TV or a t-shirt company, clothing company, who's awesome. But it's like Will and Taylor, you could legit put them on a green screen and have them go jellyfishing in the True
Yeah.
Classic,
Yeah.
and like make a funny video off that, and it gets you hits. So it's like, it's valuable from a business side because you're seeing what the pulse is on people. You're in touch with a way larger audience than just sports fans. It's hitting a different part of their brain, that's like, yeah, they like your sports content, but they're also like, oh yeah, we all grew up off of SpongeBob. And then it's just, every single person can do something better than you, like, regardless of what it is. Like, they can do one thing better than you. And so, and like, that is portrayed in shows, like, throughout all of the different characters, where, you know Jim from The Office could have this funny thing, but Michael Scott has this, and Pam has this, and Kevin has this. They're all so different, but they're all necessary for, that the joke they're trying to hit, or the lesson Michael Scott is trying to teach. And so it's just like, you need as many influences as you can, I think, to create the best messaging, because that's the only way it's going to reach that larger audience.
You dropped that one Uncle Iroh video too from Avatar: The Last Airbender. All I
Which,
gotta say, dude, that show is impeccable. I love
Gold.
that show. There are so many lessons to be learned in that show. Like, it's incredible.
yeah, I know. And I recently, dude, this is Sitton is not very happy with my newfound love of this, but do either of y'all watch anime at all?
A little bit.
A little bit. Like, I watch Dragon Ball Z, but nothing too crazy.
Right.
Naruto. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah. So I'm like on this, like, probably 1-2 year kick right now where I just can't get enough. And and I mean, I wasn't like a hater. It's not like I was making fun of people that were watching it, but like, there's anime kids at your high school and middle
Yeah.
school. You're like, oh, anime, like, the show's probably kind of weird. And then my brother finally got me into it, and I'm like, Dragon Ball Z is a perfect example. I saw
yeah.
a video a guy made. He's like, every single dad should show their kid Goku.
Yeah.
Like, he's hardworking, he's enthusiastic, he never gives up, and like, all that matters is, helping people and saving the world. And like, that is the same. Every main character in every anime, most anime, is the same, and it's like, it instills such good values, and like, way better values than these other shows that we're
Yeah.
watching. And I mean, I love all the other shows. Like, Severance is awesome. I'm dialed in on Severance. Like, I'm learning way more from like an anime show than I am Severance. I'm entertained by Severance, but
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, dude, I feel like Avatar: The Last Airbender, when I watched it when I was younger, was the first show that you like at the end, once it's done, you're kind of like, dude, I just watched all these guys grow so much. It's like,
Yep.
it's incredible. It's unbelievable, man. It's
like,
it's
Prince
truly a great show.
Zuko, like,
Yeah.
everybody can see themselves in these characters.
Yes.
It's like, man, everybody has it in them, like, to get better. And then it's always like the same common theme of Aang, whoever it is, like, kindness always wins with these guys, which is
Yeah.
cool.
It's
Absolutely.
great, man. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, you touched a little bit a little earlier about some of your goals for Make It to Midnight. So what's kind of the idea for getting it out there, scaling it, and kind of where do you want the direction for Make It to Midnight to go?
Yeah, so right now, my goal, as far as scaling it, kind of growing the following, is I'd love for you guys to take part in it too, is just I want people to, I have my one friend that did it, but I want people to submit a video of them saying, their name, what they do or where they live, and then a quote that has helped them in their life.
Definitely.
And so then, it's like my friend that shared me he's a teacher. I have the utmost respect for teachers, like most important profession in the world. And, his lesson that he learned actually from his dad was like, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And so I just think it's cool if we could get as many people as possible to share a quote, because another teacher could see Spencer's quote and they could be inspired by it. A coach could see your quote, Matt, and be like, oh man, this is something I could use on my kids. And so, like, it shows Spencer, obviously, teachers, they know they're impactful to other people. But say, like, a friend who's an accountant, he could have something that's really meaningful to him. And he probably thinks, well, like, what I have to say doesn't matter. Like, it's not going to impact somebody's life, but like, it can, because similar to all these shows, like, you need all these different characters. So, and it's a natural way to grow, the page too. It's like, it's not just me talking. Everybody's involved. It's short. I'm not asking people to give me an hour of their time, because people will get, like, they'll get off put by, I'm sure y'all have run into it, like asking people to come on the show and they're like kind of beat around the bush of it.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, that's the one way I want to scale it. And then the ultimately, I would love to, in the dream world, it would be like everybody that has submitted a quote, I would then the next year, like, this is where it gets tricky with my full-time job and everything. I would love to go to each person that sent me a quote and go, this stupid mic. I think, are we back?
You're good.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
You're good.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
And like go do a longer interview with them.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And then what I want to do with the quotes is, obviously, I mean, it'll be cool to like have them all printed out somehow, some way in a studio. But what I really want to do, anybody that sends in a quote, especially this first year, I would send them a shirt for free. I still got to design the shirt, but like you can only get the shirt if you submit a quote.
Yeah.
So hopefully in
That's
3 to
dope.
5 years, this thing is massive. And Brandon, you're at an Eagles game, or I guess you'd be wearing Chief stuff or Eagles.
I don't know, dude. I'm not wearing opposing gear in the link, bro.
True. We'll say you're in New York, just walking around, and you walk by and you see another guy with the same shirt on, and it's like a point of connection of like, oh dang, obviously y'all are strangers, but you have this thing in common. It's
Yeah.
like, oh bro, you did the Make It to Midnight? Yeah, like, oh, what was your quote? And then it's like, boom,
Dude,
you have like a new friend.
That's
a
sick.
really, really cool idea, man. That's
So
really
it's
cool.
big picture and gotta
Yeah.
stay consistent, but that's the dream.
That's
Dude,
awesome,
that's-
man.
That's so sick. That's awesome. And I feel like that's like coming from a great place in your heart, like truly just trying to connect people, truly just trying to inspire people. Like the whole reasoning for your page is something that, man, I vibe with heavy. It's like super cool, man, and very appreciative for you to share that with us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the opportunity. Y'all are the first people to ask me like about the Make It to Midnight, so
wow.
it really does mean a lot. And I would love to get some quotes from you guys to share it out to the people.
Absolutely.
Of course, dude. We gotta get our good quotes, Matt. We gotta get in the lab.
Well,
Yeah.
mine's tattooed on me, so I mean, you know what I'm coming with.
You just sent me a photo.
Yeah.
We can wrap up with one last thing. I want to ask you now. There's a bunch of people probably striving to do not the same thing, but similar things, whether that's start an Instagram page, start a podcast, start a show, get into videography, start their own business, whatever it would be. Can you give a piece of advice to someone that's like, basically think about you yourself when you first started this journey right out of college? Like, what's one piece of advice that you could give yourself or someone that age that you think could be beneficial for them long term?
Yeah, there's like two that kind of sticks out. Two and a half kind of.
Yeah.
'Cause one is just like the importance of truly being respectful and kind to everybody you meet, because the world is very connected, and you don't know. And this isn't like it's not like you're using people, but everybody offers something to somebody, and it's like the kid at Camp Ozark. If I wasn't like a good counselor or whatever, I would never have the opportunity to live in the guest house for free. So I never would have got to Dallas, which never would have got it on my resume to get me a job at IMG. If I didn't keep up a good relationship with Matt Jones, he wouldn't have had good things to say about Will or say to Will Compton. And then I don't end where I am. So to me, like kindness is the greatest tool that you can add to your belt when you're like trying to make it. So that would be one. Two, something that has really driven me is I forget who said it. I don't know if I heard it from like Goggins first, but it was the like when you die and you go to heaven or whatever you believe, but in this case you go to heaven and you're in line, you go meet God, and he pulls out your name and he says, "Okay, JP, you were." It's tough because I feel like I'm doing the things I was put here to do. But say like, JP, you were a motivational speaker that you know impacted millions of lives. You started this foundation. You did this. You did that. But that wasn't my life. And I was like, wait, no, actually, I just produced a podcast.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, this is what you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
These are the gifts I gave you.
Yeah.
Like keeping that in my mind, I'm like, man, like whenever I go, I do not want to go have that conversation and be shown the things that I could have achieved.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that motivates me a lot.
No, that's awesome. And I agree completely. Like that's always something too. It's like a big thing that I feel like I heard and you hear all the time is like, dude, just start. Just like go for it. There's always next week. Like you can always start it later, but dude, just jump in it and give it your all. And like you said, when you get up there and you have to look at like these were the talents that you were given and this is what was supposed to happen, you want to walk away with that and be like, you know what, I achieved what I knew I was capable of. You don't want to leave any doubt. So that's awesome, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, definitely. There's so much good stuff out there, so much to learn from so many people. Another one would just be, especially when you're young, to say yes to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because you never know who you meet. Like when I was with Corey Boyd, he put me in touch, and I was like filming women's league football, and it was, I mean, it is. I'm the only white dude out there, and
Yeah.
I'm like 20 years old, and now I'm like, first off, where did we find 45 women to like strap up and like let's play some ball?
Yeah.
But it was an awesome experience, and it's just like it's a cool story to tell later on. And shout out to those girls, like for everyone welcoming me in, and it's like I could have easily said no because it was uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but said yes, met awesome people, got an awesome story, and like you just learn a lot.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Man. But listen, we really appreciate you coming on and taking a shot on us again. You didn't know us before this, so I really appreciate you like connecting with us, being very willing to come on and talk about your journey and your new process with Make It to Midnight. Follow JP on it's at Make It to Midnight, right, on Instagram.
Yeah.
Follow him. He's on YouTube. His personal account, people can follow you there too.
Yeah, J Hovey 34 for the personals on Instagram and Twitter, and I think that's my YouTube channel is just my name too.
Yeah. So everyone go give him a follow. Go submit some quotes, man. That'll be awesome. I look forward to seeing that and seeing the rest of your content and really appreciate like all you're doing and seriously like feel like our values and mission kind of align with yours, and it's really cool to get to talk to someone who's on a similar path and like you got two guys that are rooting for you and are always in your corner now, man. So I
Absolutely.
really appreciate you taking the time with us.
Appreciate it, man, and likewise. Hey, episode 100. Don't forget about me. I would love to be the guest.
Yeah, dude, definitely, man. We'd love to have you back on. So seriously, appreciate it, man. And yeah, man, have a good one. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. See you guys.